A man that needs no introduction, but it is always my honor and privilege to do so. Clif is back with me. This is our third episode together over the course of maybe 5 or 6 years. I've had the opportunity to do these amazing one-on-one sessions with him. And guys, I mean, such a time, wild times we live in, and I'm just so grateful to have access to this guy. There's nobody else quite like him. Clif, thanks so much for doing this with me today.
Thank you much. No worries. Great intro.
Aw, thanks. Yeah, so, I've been practicing. Practicing. I'm always nervous. I never get nervous to do just shows with anybody else, but the Clif High shows always give me nerves. I think it has to do with your following. I think it has to do with the viewership that our videos typically get. And also, our shows are typically followed by major life events and a lot of change, ripples in the collective. So there's a lot of things I'd love to talk about today. And I'm not even sure where to start. So any suggestions, anything you'd like to jump into to get us warmed up here today?
Sure, let's do it this way. Let's do a lead in to your issue about the power, okay? Yeah. But let's do it this way. Let's actually reverse what I thought of and let's do a card pull, okay? Because I have a curiosity. And so my curiosity is I would like to know what the event stream can tell us about this idea. We know that so let me describe it a bit, all right? So we know there's chemtrails, we know they're doing this depopulation thing, all of that, right? We know that they're claiming for climate change and everybody should be afraid and so on. So the question comes down to, since the powers that be are doing that, do they actually fear an extinction level event, and that this is all basically a cover for that or their way of dealing with that? Because if they felt that, and specifically what I'm thinking about is this meteor or asteroid Apophis, which supposedly is coming back in 2029, and then maybe it'll be 2030. I don't have an exact time frame on that. So do they fear something like that? And this is the cover for it. Because, for instance, we see Zuckerberg. He admits he's got a big tunnel under his house in Hawaii, and that makes no sense to climate change. It makes no sense to recently, by the way, Catherine Austin Fitts was on Tucker and was talking about all of this weird shit going on, all the underground bases and stuff, okay? Underground bases don't make any sense if it's an ice age that they're fearing, and that was what she was proffering as their motivation. Underground bases would not do you any good in an ice age. They would if the ice were like, big glaciers or something and suddenly there, but creeping in as an ice age, an underground base doesn't do you any good. So now there's one other aspect of this. I don't know how we would phrase that. But is it an extinction level event they're afraid of, or is it the return of the space aliens? In either of those two cases, if you had Apophis the meteor, or if you had real space alien invasion, as in the form of the Elohim coming back, that would make sense to have underground bases.
All right, let's take a look here. So fascinating. So we have the Ace of Cups, the Seven of Swords, and the Four of Cups. Now, really what I asked here was I wanted to gauge their genuine fear. Who is they? Okay. And I also saw that interview. I watched it twice, Tucker Carlson and Catherine Fitts. She made mention of the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, and really was able to describe this kind of, or localize, at least in our minds, localize a power structure in which a lot of the global controls are, managed. And so when I think about who they are, I think about another term she used, intergenerational pools of capital. I call them ancient gangs, right? And they're basically people that are just deeply rooted, deeply embedded. They have all the capital, they're sovereign, they have their own police force, their own set of rules and laws. So that's the they, as far as I can tell, and for the sake of conversation. Now, what they are genuinely afraid of is, this is not what I was expecting. The Ace of Cups, so what they genuinely fear does not appear to be a cataclysm. The Ace of Cups traditionally is a renewal, a phase of regeneration and renewal, and a kind of super fast, supercharged rush of information, specific, particularly around the emotional and sort of spiritual field. That's what the Ace of Cups is. This is when, you know, people have a connection with the divine. So to them, that could be a cataclysm. There's not that many of them in comparison to us. Yes, they have the money, they have the tech, they have this and that. But what they don't have is something that I've always considered to be consensus. They don't have the bulk of things. That's us. That's the surface population. You know, the Seven of Swords is also some kind of betrayal, which is interesting. Like, their fear is being betrayed and exposed. So
that makes sense, you know, because they are so vulnerable to exposure.
So, and another thing as well, here with the Four of Cups, they certainly fear natural death. They seem to fear natural order basically doing its thing. Their whole mechanism appears to be centered around their agenda, their ability to stop natural processes or interfere with natural processes. So it could be that they're making it out that this is, you know, they're creating this to get ahead of some kind of cataclysmic event. It could just be they're scared to answer for their crimes when we figure shit out. Right. But of course, this is just my interpretation.
But it also fits too, because if they're afraid of you can still find sort of information, rumors that they're afraid of a hard contact. That's what they call it on the dark web. Yes. It's hard contact, and they expect that between 2029 and 2032. And then there's, of course, no real definition, because you're just picking it up in their conversations back and forth. But I've always understood hard contact to be in your face, undeniable space aliens, boots on the ground. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily an invasion, because one of the guys here, provable, visible, etc., does so much in the way of upsetting everything. So this makes sense, what you're talking about, the natural order, the progression, how they want to stop natural processes, because as I understand their understanding of the space aliens in the past were as gods because they could stop natural processes. They did live 20, 30,000 years in their energy domes, etc., right? And that was their claim to godhood, really, was the ability to alter the natural order of things, including humans. We're altered. We've never had genes included in us, but we've had the number 2 chromosome burnt out. So every human on the planet has the second chromosome gone. And we have a damage there in our DNA that is exactly like you get from CRISPR when you use that on any other being. So we know it's been done to us. So that relieves my mind. So I don't think they're really worried about Apophis. That was the one thing that you can't control, is, the planet being hit by a big rock, right? But if they're not worried about that, it makes so much sense that they're worried about something, in their sense, bigger, because they could hide from a rock in their underground bunkers. That never made any sense to me, though, because if, for instance, you had those underground, Zuckerberg's in Hawaii, he runs there, he flees, there's a big meteor strike, who the fuck's going to be there to serve him? Who the fuck is going to be there to dig him out when that thing is buried under a mountain of debris or washed over by the ocean or whatever? So humans need other humans. So this makes a lot of sense. I'm actually, like I say, I'm somewhat relieved. I can deal with the space alien part, Yeah. That was no big deal. That's just expected.
So, and to your point, I think they may be aware that there is some kind of built-in global defense weapon system that was put here, I believe, built and placed here by the people, the aliens. I see them as people. This Earth is not just ours. I believe it is under the jurisdiction of some kind of hierarchical powers. And we're not actually allowed to, this is why I think we were only allowed to experiment with nuclear. And we really were not allowed to go any further with nuclear capabilities, because at that point, we're affecting the planet on a molecular, atomic level. We're now bleeding over our bullshit into realms.
Into everybody else, right? Right. Well, okay, so I know. I have no idea who put it there, okay, but we have factual things throughout history that support the idea of like a planetary defense system. Yeah. In my opinion, because I've really examined them, they're undeniable. One of them was the Great Tunguska Blast, right? Blew that thing up precisely, 1 mile up in the atmosphere. And the effects were huge on the planet, but nothing compared to what it would have been had it hit. And at the time, there was no human capacity to do that, right? So we know that there is some level of incredible energy, and it didn't just explode on its own from heat coming in. We know that from examining the debris. Then there's the other thing that was just recently, which was I actually witnessed here, which was the strange lights up over Vancouver, British Columbia. So when I saw them down here 135 miles as the crow flies from their occurrence, and I'm on at 155 feet up, they had to have been at least 8,000 feet, probably closer to 10 or 12,000. When I run through the energy calculations, no matter what AI I use, the energy calculations come out to about, at minimum, 2.5 megaton explosion needed to create those lights. So that level of energy, right? So that's not human, or if it is, it's unknown human technology. So I agree with you. There's some other stuff going on there, but this actually makes me feel better because now I'm not worried about that aspect of it.
Yeah, no, I think, and what's interesting too is I think an existential event such as an asteroid or something like that it seemingly was out of the hands of even the folks over in Basel, Switzerland. All the money in the world can't save you in that kind of situation, right? So I think even with the oncoming of an existential threat like that, we would then as a civilization be forced to reckon with our reality and who and what we are in relation to the rest of everything, who we are from a planetary standpoint, from a galactic standpoint, and who we are as a species, as a race. And I kind of get the sense that their attempt to get ahead of the narrative and create all of these outs and hoard technology, hoard knowledge, hoard information is just a means to slow or curtail this inevitable resurgence of really, it's like a divine memory that I think is inherent within human beings. And integration of information changes paradigms. When people know things, it changes them. I don't have to tell you. I'm preaching to the choir.
Correct, right. Well, that's actually, okay, so that was my base level of assumption, right? That you're quite correct, that they fear the change and the loss of power more than anything, and that they've been in control for at least 2,400 years. Well, it'd be 2,700 years because I think that they were in control throughout the entire Kali Yuga, and that all of our religions originated during that period of time as other methods of control. Then there's all these layers and layers and layers upon that. And so I agree with you that is their ultimate fear. And it may be that they actually are putting out all of these other fears as misdirects for any of us that may catch on to that so that we don't zero in on it. But you're also quite correct. It's inevitable. And even if they recognize, I don't know, I would think they would be smarter and recognize that there are yugas, that time itself does a lot of this, and that they can't escape. And so you would think that they would reconcile. But, the adrenochrome addiction and the fear of death and all of that, they're just not able to overcome that. So we're here, we have this situation. And of course, universe wants us to go through it. I also don't think universe wants to eliminate humans. The fact that we're here and we've come through all of this shit, it's supposed to happen this way. So I think we've got big challenges ahead of us that are going to help us mature. Really, that's what it is. I was questioning whether or not, and just because the powers that be would fear Apophis or fear some kind of like a hard contact, doesn't mean that it's factual that we have to. They get screwy ideas all the time, and their fears are not necessarily, everybody can have confirmation bias, basically. They put all that money, the Vatican put all that money into astronomical people, sites and facilities and stuff. And so far, no yield from all the money they put into this. But that tends to support the Apophis idea and so on. But it never really set well with me. I kind of like the idea of tapping into the event stream to see what's going on at the moment in terms of, this understanding of everything bubbling out. That's actually been quite freeing. That's why I've been concentrating on the ontology idea. Hopefully that idea will seed itself because, I think everybody that is ritual-based in their religion could abandon the religion if they saw the universe talking to them personally every day. So you've got a guy, he's got all these reasons to be a badass terrorist and so on. Would he do so if he thought his God didn't want him to? If he thought the universe talking to him was his God talking to him? I don't care. It doesn't matter to me that they put a religion on it. But if you actually saw that and you had all the qualia coming in every day to reinforce it, would you go that way? I don't think so. I think that kind of stuff, as you say, information changes us.
It changes people. It changes paradigms. It just it terraforms what I call the psychological terrain of the planet, and namely the West. I was born in the Western Hemisphere. This place means a lot to me. So I'm always, that's my lens. That's my worldview is of the West. It's so interesting you mentioned, make reference to Apophis. Catherine, if you guys haven't checked out the interview, go ahead. It's so hard hitting. It's fabulous. I could notice Tucker visibly.
Yeah. It's like she was slapping him.
She was just blowing him away. I think he needed to hear this, maybe more than anything else. Tucker needed to hear this information, to know this, and his people certainly needed to hear it as well. She did make reference to a series called Three Body Problem. I haven't seen it for myself, but the gist of it is about planetary bodies that move into Earth's basically it starts to interact with Earth, and then all of these planetary things change: floods, earthquakes, volcanoes, you name it. So that was an interesting thing that she brought up. There is the notion that they may truly, be concerned or planning some kind of, contingency plan, because as these planetary bodies move into our orbit, they change things. And so is it a pole shift? Is it
so that's what I've investigated forever is the details about all of that. So there's never been a pole shift on Earth. All that information is misinterpreted, in my opinion, all the way back to Hapgood, which was in the 1950s. I agree with Catherine about the Three Body Problem. The Three Body Problem movie is predictive. And there's also a series. I think it was maybe Japanese that started it all, or Chinese. But anyway, it's predictive programming to a great degree on us. They're trying to get us to think that way. They may indeed think that there's something going on planetarily, but these guys have a tendency, in my opinion, to misinterpret information based on their assumptions. Okay, so assumptions will always come back and bite you in the ass. All these guys have propped up gritology, Einstein relativity, forever. They put it in place. They paid to put it in place. They paid to suppress Tesla, and they paid to suppress Walter Russell and all of these other guys. The Gritology view is inappropriate. It's stupid. It doesn't work. It's rational materialism, okay? And everything is matter, and if all life died, matter would still exist. And I don't buy that a minute. If you shed that assumption, that base level of assumption that all of their science is built on, then you get an entirely different view of reality. And all of a sudden, all kinds of things that were mathematically impossible become quite possible and very easily done. So I've had this big shift from, and it takes a lot. It takes you really a lot of time to work through your own assumptions to get to the idea that everything is consciousness, and you need to turn your head 100% and look at everything as though everything is consciousness, and then what does that do to your view? Now, even if I did not think that was factual, just being able to twist your perspective often brings new results and new thinking to you, right?
Yes.
But so these guys may indeed be so hidebound in their own understanding of relativity that they're misinterpreting everything. And so I can see idiots like Zuckerberg putting billions into underground houses, even though an underground house would not save you in the event of the conditions that he's actually fearing. You know, in fact, to me, it would be terrible to be in an underground house and then have a cataclysm, and then you're stuck, you're trapped, you've entombed yourself, right? I mean, I would freak out about that kind of thing.
Same. I think about that.
So, you know, but anyway, though, it's fascinating trying to figure out what these guys are up to and what their mindset is. So there's a really smart guy out there by the name of Dan Pena, and he's a money guy. He's a really fantastic money guy, a billionaire kind of fellow. And he had this, he was doing a live stream or doing a session with some people in an audience, and someone brought up climate change, and he like flipped out because he said, you know, no big money believes in climate change. Insurance companies aren't preparing for it. People are still buying waterfront property, blah, 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 blah. And you people are stupid because you need to follow the money. And so I had a great friend, Jim Sinclair, and he was that same way, right? So he said, I always did energy calculations. You know, this is possible because of the amount of energy required. This other thing isn't possible. So we can't go in time even 1 millisecond because of the huge amount of energy required to do so. Okay, so I know time travel is bogus in all forms. But in any event, though, so Jim Sinclair did that same kind of thing with money analysis. His viewpoint was it's very illuminating to do that because you see basically where they put their money is where their mind is. And they will put money into movies and stuff as a deliberate control mechanism, in my opinion, for the humans, right, about this sort of thing. Now, the interview with Catherine and I have a great deal of respect for. We fight frequently because we have differing opinions on stuff, and because I think we have a lot of these different opinions.
You know her?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I know Catherine. Oh, sure, I've known her for years.
This is how it is. You know, it's a small. The most brilliant minds in the world. Like, it's good. You guys should know each other. That's like.
Yeah, and we fight. I love her dearly. She's just is a real treasure. I was so distressed. Okay, and so actually we share same enemies. Okay, so the deep state has come after both of us with the same sons of bitches. Yep. She had these conferences way back in the day, like in maybe it was year 2000 was the first one they did or so, 2001. She was digging into the secret space program, deep state, black projects from a money analysis viewpoint. Yes. And it revealed so much. And she had one conference and it was such a big success. They were going to have another conference. I think maybe they had two and they were just great. And then on the third one, because I did a second or third one, and everything gets blown up because the CIA wanted it to blow up. Sure. So CIA put money into Gaia, the TV station, in order to pimp Corey Goode, because Corey Goode's fantastic bullshit space fighting reptilian, all of that kind of stuff, blew Catherine out of the water because of the way that they had structured it. He was
it's exciting.
Exactly. Well, more than that, I mean, in terms of the details and so on. So yeah, but So I've known Catherine since those days because Corey Good was also my enemy. I bitched at him on Twitter and he ended up suing me. But, and deep state money behind him and all of this kind of thing.
Who hasn't he sued? Yeah, who hasn't he attempted to sue? The guy is a total.
It was a Corey Good's intergalactic butthead, but
intergalactic butthead. You heard it here, gentlemen. I love that. No, and it really all does make sense. They'll attempt to blow up, entire communities of, schools of thought before they really start to take hold and sort of unschool some brilliant minds among us. God forbid this information gets to the youngins and they come up with this new understanding, this true understanding of what's been going on. That's a huge threat. And certainly
that was one of the most fascinating things to watch from my perspective, because it was visible to me what they were doing to Catherine and to her, and it also to Richard Dolan and dark journalists and all these people that were around Catherine in terms of focusing on the money to reveal the secret space program and all the disappearing trillions and all of that, right?
Yes.
So you could see them moving, and they were actually quite alarmed, in my opinion, the way that the deep state moved and became so visible. They were very alarmed at her, that she scared them at a very significant level because she was making such a huge impact in such a short period of time. They just let loose with everything and derailed her conferences, and then it just all went to shit.
Yeah.
So, it was an interesting thing to watch. I've been respectful of her over time, but we have these differing assumptions on things, but we frequently arrive at the same conclusions, in general. So I think that's valid, but we still fight. I send her emails and we still bitch and moan at each other.
What an honor. Honestly, what an honor. It's a wonderful thing. And, the current state of the SSP, the secret space program, at least from like a commercial standpoint, it's absolutely atrocious. It's ridiculous. It's comical. It's a clown show. And I really, yes, it's a clown show. Just within the last, I want to say 6 to 8 years, it has devolved into just something absolutely laughable. And I regret
by design.
By design, certainly. And I regret to see that, because this is such hard-hitting information. It would absolutely, change the face of the psychological terrain and strengthen our understanding about our origins and our potential. You see these people with book deals about their experiences off planet. And I've met some of these people. They can't lift their body weight to save their lives, and yet they're fighting 10-foot reptilians off planet. And I'm like, how and where? You can't even do a pull-up. Like, let's have a foot race right now. Let's see what you need, and not to, but really and truly, it's comical. And all that to say that I think that there absolutely is a places that these trillions are being funneled into, and certainly has a lot to do with what's happening off planet and implicated in the multi-planetary civilization. And so Catherine made some really excellent points. Apparently the central bankers anticipate resets to take place every 100 years or so. And the current reset that we find ourselves in, the theme is this multi-planetary civilization and their attempt to basically globalize it before anybody else. And
control it. Yep.
Control it. And I thought that was absolutely fascinating. It all just makes sense how they would, try to stir up drama and muddy the waters, classic CIA for you, typical.
Emotionally whipped up, and then you can move them, right? Once you got the emotions, because that's what it takes to have decisions. So I bitch at people that say AI can have a decision. It can't. It can only follow logic trees in the software. In order to make any decisions and have any motivation, you have to have emotion. No AI will ever have emotion, right? That's a chemical process. Within us, you need flesh. But this brings up something we could pull on. The second one I wanted to ask about. So I'm of the opinion that BTC, Bitcoin, was to be one of their vehicles. And it got out through people like me, through the Ontology letting me know about it and all of these other things. And we start talking about it ahead of time, right? So there were a lot of people that were irritated that cryptocurrencies came out when they did. I think that they really wanted them to emerge in 2020 or 2021 as part of all of the COVID shit, right? And instead we get them out in 2011, just when I start talking about them and so on. And then in the data, it showed that Bitcoin would go over 100,000. And I started talking about that. We got people involved, people become millionaires, and it spread out too early. So this is one of the things that Catherine and I not fight about, but it's a point of contention. She says that that Bitcoin and this kind of stuff was a DARPA invention. And so that implies deep state. And I say, okay, she's probably 100% correct, but that does not matter to me, because the Interstate 5 out here, the entire interstate system is a DARPA invention. It doesn't keep me from driving on the damn road, right?
Right.
And using it for my needs.
Right.
So my question is, did Bitcoin get out of their control?
Bear with me just a moment, folks.
Sure.
We're buffering here. We're buffering. I try to tell people, it's, when you're shuffling, or when I'm shuffling, if you guys are familiar with an old school padlock like we used to have on our lockers, where you have to spin it to the left. But if you're tuned in, there's a little click, a teeny little click every time you hit that number. That's what it's like shuffling the cards. You have to wait for the click, and it's subtle, but you have to trust it. You have to trust your skill, your intuition. So let's see here.
My perspective, that's syncing up with the event stream. That's getting in sync with all of the resonance coming out right at that moment. I call it collapsing the potential, the field potential.
Oh, wow. Guys, isn't Clif just something else? We're lucky to have you.
Sure. You say that now.
We'll always say it. We will always say it. So a couple of things coming up here. We have two major arcana coming up. So in the tarot, these are we call them the big guns. These are the big karmic forces that just have their way with us. And we have the Hierophant. This is Taurus energy. This is also number 5. So anytime we're talking about empirical structures, the deep state, this is the card that, that's for all intents and purposes, this is the establishment. Okay.
Right. So DARPA is one of those faces up there. Yeah.
So then we have the 6 of Pentacles and the 5 of Pentacles. Notice it's going in a downward sequence. We go from the 6 to the 5. This tells me that if at one point they created this as a means of having communal money, this is what the 6 of Pentacles is money that can be shared within an ecosystem, but contained within that ecosystem as well. There are borders there. There's a framework, and it can only exist and flow within that framework. The down sequence from the 6 to the 5 tells me they lost control of the bus.
Yeah.
They lost control of the bus. A disc was taken out, and essentially it opened up. And then to clarify whether or not this is now, Bitcoin is now kind of a free agent, or at least has been, removed from this very, almost archaic or, old school structure. We have the star. Everybody that is watching me, hopefully most folks that are watching you, is aware of the significance of 17. And this is the notion of freedom, the notion of a way through. These are our cosmic connections. This is the star, it's Aquarius, and this is all about hope, and this is all about potential. And this is the exact opposite of this. Yeah. the exact opposite. So all of this, I'm going to go ahead and co-sign on your theory here, your belief that Bitcoin, I think maybe in the beginning, well, certainly in the beginning, may have been created to utilize funds and resources within a contained ecosystem. They've lost control of the bus. Something fell out of the bottom, and now it's its own. It's almost like a free and open slate. And
okay, so let's hold up that one card there too, because we need to note all of the influences of the eternal now that we exist in and the event stream. So that was card 17. In a numerological sense, 17 becomes 8. 8 is the supreme lucky number for the Chinese.
That's right.
Okay, but also 8 for the Greeks and the Egyptian was the number of infinity. It is the number prior to the number of completion, which is 9. And so again, I think that this is the event stream and the ontology telling us that this is an accurate understanding and that there's a further layer there. And this was what I was trying to determine. So the question is resolved, but it had this other hidden aspect in terms of the assumption. If it was still under the control of of DARPA and the people and so on of the financial system, then we would not get an infinity card. We wouldn't get the star,
No.
but also it would mean that what I'm seeing was not actually occurring as I think it is. So here's the where my mind springs from that. I think I'm seeing the use of Bitcoin coming up by the administration here, both as a weapon, but also as the method by which they will suck up all of those trillions of illegally created dollars and get them out of the system such that they can maintain the dollar and keep it going. We're at the end of the system, like you were saying. They reset every 100 plus years, right? 100 to 112 years. This has to do with the lifespan of the currencies. Most currencies die within 54 years unless you do something. They've done everything they could to keep it going. We've been in petrodollar 54 years this year. So we're at the point of death. So in order to keep it going, now Trump has inherited this problem, okay? And the problem is much bigger than they maybe. Maybe they're just letting us know, and they knew about the real extent of the problem and may know much more about the real extent of the problem than they're letting us know at this stage. But we had $5 trillion that were created that weren't on the books. We had 14 computers that were creating money that is not on the books of the Federal Reserve. This is a very bad situation because the liquidity in the system is not balanced the way that the Federal Reserve is saying with all of their numbers and all the financial people are saying with all their numbers. That's why our system is behaving so wonky now. They think they're dealing with a series of ponds, and we've got massive reservoirs that they're not aware of. And so we're in a situation where in order to keep Trump, in order to keep the dollar going, is faced with some circumstances. In order to get in a constitutional dollar, you can't create enough constitutional dollars to match one for one with all the existent dollars, let alone now this huge pile of illegal dollars. So they've got to do something to squeeze out the illegal money. What I think they're going to do, this is my opinion, but my opinion is they're going to use cryptocurrencies to sop up all of that money, all those digits, and lock them in place. And that Bitcoin is one of these great places to do that because most Bitcoin is not traded. And so there's a lot of hodlers. As you buy a Bitcoin, the rule is you don't sell it, right?
Right.
And so what I think will occur is that we'll go beyond the projections that even like Max Kaiser has. So Max Kaiser thinks we're going to $250,000 on a Bitcoin. I've actually seen in my data that we'll cross 108 and it'll cross 108 and stay over that 5 days. And then we'll go over 128 and then we'll go over 154. And this is just, episodic, it's not a straight line or anything.
Sure.
But I've been seeing this last couple of times, I've been seeing stuff that the only way it made sense, all right, way back when I first started getting Bitcoin as opposed to just new money in the data, and it started localizing to the actual label of Bitcoin, it started showing that Bitcoin was going to be a means for international trade settlements. And now, as we understand, with all of the huge amounts of illegal money and settling up all of the trade, the drug trade, all of this stuff with all of these huge amounts of bucks, The only way that that would be possible is with a limited number of Bitcoin, which is about 19 million. They think about 3 million have been lost, and there's a cap of 21 million. So with 19 million Bitcoin, the only way that that would be possible is if each Bitcoin was astronomically huge in terms of the amount of US dollars. So I think maybe Max Kaiser and myself are both way low on the scale of where Bitcoin is headed. That indeed it may go 1 million, 2 million. That's the kind of numbers I saw in the last run was 2.5 million for a Bitcoin. And I kept trying to make it resolve. And so thus the question, right? Wow. If they do that, you could get 2.5 million to a Bitcoin and it would be barely adequate to suck up some of this stuff.
So I just, as you're talking here, taking it all in, and my cards are my, they're my instrument, they're my tool. It's an extension of my psyche here, and they help me a lot. And so as you're talking, I'm like, let's get a card, let's see. And we get the star card again. Okay. So folks, if you felt so inclined, go ahead at your own convenience, check out the star card in traditional tarot. I'm using the Thoth tarot deck, which is a little bit different, kind of an intensified version, very artistic version of the traditional Rider-Waite. But the star card really does pack this whole element of anything can happen and also expect the unexpected. Now, this is very much, I also got the Eon, which is another word for the Judgment card. The Eon and the Judgment card are the same, but they have the notion here is of a time is up. The pressure is on, Judgment Day is here. I'm under the impression here that this Bitcoin, that the kind of absorption of these trillions of dollars, this happens under some kind of darkness. There might be some kind of shutting off, because again, something with the Judgment card, this is about nighttime. This is the shroud of darkness, the cover of darkness, serving a purpose. For these other things to happen in this interim. So this does have the hallmarks that we would associate with like a 3-day period of things going down, or however long that period is. I find that I get that it's brief. I don't think this is going to be like a year where everything is shut off, but I'm kind of getting this, this interim, this gray area where things are very, there's cover, and they're able then to, make these moves, make these changes. And I know everybody wants to know about when's it going to happen? And the short answer is, I don't know. The short answer is, I don't know. They have their plans, they have their deadlines. But by the way it looks, we're probably going to see a whole bunch of major changes before the year 2030. That doesn't give us too much time. But no, I have to say, I don't really do too much research on my own by way of Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. It's not something that, personally interests me. But as you guys know, I'm not really a money person. I'm more of a, I like cryptids and primary waters, and I like aliens and stuff like that. But the economy is more than just the economy. This is also energy. This is how energy moves through our planet, and it's extremely important. So I'm optimistic about the future implications of Bitcoin, and I do love the notion of blockchain technology as being a means of keeping things transparent and never allowing this kind of squeeze of trillions of dollars to be, slushed into some kind of, secret operations. That should really never be allowed to happen again. So this does look like a means to correct that problem. So I'm optimistic.
Also, the Eon card there would suggest doing stuff under the covers. The Trump guys will have to do a lot of this stuff surreptitiously so that we don't find out about it, not because they're trying to hide it from us, but if everybody knows about it, it won't go down. People would front run it, etc. Right?
Well, yeah, and military strategy is the tale as old as time. You never ever discuss an operation as it's happening, ever.
Right.
You can talk about it years later. You can't talk about it while it's happening. So they do have to create conditions that, to the surface population, seems like it could feel like the end of things. It could feel very dramatic and very scary, and yet this is the nature of this planet. Is things are happening. We don't necessarily have the whole, the full spectrum awareness of it, but there are moves being made, and things are happening. So something else I would like your thoughts on here. I just the other day, I believe it was Monday, I had a sleepless night Sunday night. I was just getting so much stuff. The astral realm was so active. I kept getting pulled awake and pulled awake and pulled awake. So I'm like, something's happening. Something's going on in the ether. And then Monday, there was this massive outage, blackout. I believe Spain, Portugal.
Parts of France, parts of Greenland. Yep.
Yes.
And that Sunday is interesting because you know what happened on Sunday night. And just before the power outage, because the time difference for us, because it was Europe versus US, we had a huge Schumann resonance disruption, giant level, and it went on for hours.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Because I was.
You're actually feeling the electromagnetic. Oh. I had a terrible night then too, and then all this stuff breaking around here and stuff. So that all fits, right? And this is okay. So we live in a weird little ontology, and so an ontology is a universe speaking to us, right? It's seeking limits of its own existence, trying to create novelty through us. We're the neural net through which it's doing its AI, if you want. But so it was speaking to us, and we'll never, in my opinion, they'll never be able to pull off their depopulation. They'll never be able to take over the planet and all of this stuff because they're operating on, and they don't understand that the ontology is directing all of us and wants to create these conditions and get the energy moving such that novelty could break out. And novelty is not going to break out if we live in a utopia. We're just going to sit there peaceful as sheep almost, right? That evil and disruption and agitation and all of this stuff is a necessary part of this universe in order for it to achieve its goal, which is to create novelty.
I could totally see that. We need the pressure,
Exactly. It's a pressure cooker. And without the steam, nothing gets cooked, right? And the goal is to cook a novelty out of all of us. So I see this as a time where, okay, so I don't see time as everybody else does, or as most people. So we are in a period where the event stream is manifesting magnificent amount of stuff. And we're starting to understand that we live in this eternal now that doesn't go forward, can't ever go back. And that we think of time, what we think of a time is just all of the events that are rushing out of the event stream at us, the energy crystallizing into matter, if you will, and motion through matter and people and so on, as a result of the energy itself. And we make decisions on that feeds into the whole thing is karma. We make a decision that feeds back into the event stream and creates the stuff that's going to come out to us in the future. Yeah. And so it's this continual grind. And that's why the Buddhists say everything is grist for the mill, because the mill is the event stream. And we're to receive it all, okay? So the ontology is good to us that if you look at the event stream and see ahead, you get qualia, okay? And so the qualia is a bit of communication, a bit of meaning that comes to you. And so it can be really small, it can be magnificently small, it could be really huge. All of a sudden you're around a corner and there's a vista that you had been in your mind for years. And that vista matches up with whatever image was in your mind from whatever source, and that's a qualia from the universe telling you to examine that source, to feel about that. And mostly it wants us to feel about things so that we can think about them in an appropriate way, and it affects our decisions. Mostly, especially with women, but even with men, mostly our decisions are affected by the universe screwing with our emotions, altering our emotions through these qualia. And so when you're sitting there, and you know when you're psychic. you'll feel it. You'll feel yourself with the tingle, with the cards and the stuff like that, right? And so that's going to be a good reading, and you know that universe is communicating through you at that point. Mm-hmm. I think part of our situation now, the unfolding, the reset, the summer of emergence, secrets revealed, all of this is to get us to the point where we operate in that kind of understanding, that level of understanding as much as possible throughout our lives. That we don't live as materialists thinking that everything is random chance and that life sprung from, two God molecules smacking into each other, that kind of a deal. And right. because if you do have this ontological view, then all of our science changes. And also then you can see karma being writ large, in front of you. Now, when they go and arrest Fauci and ultimately they execute him, people are not going to be thinking about the karma that he caused with all of these acts he's been doing all of these years for decades. They're just going to be caught up in the moment thinking finally we got him. It's, it happened. Right. And so we have to eliminate a lot of these things from our language. And I'm grappling with an understanding of the event stream because it occurs to me that all of my work for all of these years that led to all these predictions that were in fact, and manifested, that came out as fact in some manner, is basically an ability to see ahead in the event stream. That's not, it may have been unique to me in my approach, but the idea that we can do that is starting to catch on. And I think we will have an entirely different understanding of our reality and our experience once we get into this. And it leads to the point where you could trust someone that was an ontologist, even a space alien. If the space aliens show up here and they start talking about the ontology and qualia, whatever they term it, and that's how they live, because we know that their science is superior because they got here. We can't make off planet, instantaneous travel yet, supposedly. But so you can trust an ontologist because they're never going to do anything against that trust, because they know how they themselves would be damaged in the event stream because of messing with the karma. Yeah. And so kind of like, there really aren't too many analogies to get the idea across, but so you could actually trust an ontologist with 0-point energy. So if you found a group of Africans in a village, you could give them 0-point technology if they were ontologically motivated and understanding, because none of those individuals are going to turn it into a weapon, right? So you could not trust any of the Muslim countries to have that attitude at this point, because they have so much hatred, so many reasons to be terrorists, blah, 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 blah. You're sure that kind of stuff is going to come out. Until they change, we won't be able to introduce 0-point technology into that portion of the civilization. You could probably introduce it to Russia because they don't have the motivation to be planet destroyer kind of guys. And that's what 0-point technology gives you, is incredibly powerful weapons. But I think we're there now. So Catherine's interview with Tucker, now we've got people like Ashton Forbes running around describing the MH370 flight and how it was disappeared. And I think he's accurate in his conclusions and stuff. So they are now, the deep state is now demonstrating that they own 0-point technology as weapons anyway. It's always been my goal to get my own little flying RV and go putting around, right? To avoid the roads. I hate road trips. But so I think we're close. I actually think that we'll see some level of emergence of that this year. And that's going to be kind of interesting to see how that goes as well.
So it's interesting. So as you say that, I pull, God, like you really can't make this stuff up. So many cards in a tarot deck, and we keep getting the same ones. I would say that's ontology. That's
exactly. That's qualia. Yep.
There it is. And we have these two cards that came up already. Here they are again, the Hierophant and the Six of Pentacles. All that to suggest that the intention to hoard and steer the application of 0-point energy here in particular, because that's what we're talking about, that it's almost like it's not allowed. It's not And I think too, and we'd be getting into other things here. I think like, the human collective, there's an entire realm where our hopes and our dreams and our desire for the future that stems from where we've come from. I think that really does generate a very powerful sort of propulsion forward. And if they be few and we be many, I do think our intention and our desire works through us, even if we're not at the surface consciously aware and you maybe couldn't articulate it. It's so deep within us where we come from and where we together as a civilization want to go. And I'm under the impression that, they do have it, Six of Pentacles and the Hierophant, but it's almost like it's still a little bit under lock and key, kind of like they're allowed to fiddle with it.
Yeah, they'd have to have it that way. They'd be paranoid about that. I think they're quite correct about that too, that they, there's a lot of reasons they wouldn't want to let it out, not just simply control, but also potential danger, et cetera. So this makes a lot of sense. Now the thing is, so with the Bitcoin slipping out of their hands, basically, are we going to get this slipping out of their hands? How much of the control is going to be removed that way? The Ontology doesn't want us under control. It doesn't want us eliminated as a species. It wants us to succeed. Yeah. And so I see that all the time in the qualia that are presented to me. It's going to be a very intense summer for sure. But anyway, though, what was I going to say? Oh, the thing about the 0 point technology and like Stephen Greer and the space aliens and all of this, at its core, so it could be a natural human invention. So Tesla supposedly, the man, Nikola Tesla, supposedly discovered a way of getting 0 point energy into a car and was driving a car around with an electric motor that was, the size of a little toaster. So we could have organic stuff that way, but we do have proof that there's been external, extra Earth influences in the form of all of these technologies that emerged from 1947, supposedly as a result of the Roswell crash. And I think they're at that point, they're about ready, that they basically have to do something. So Trump, let's just say he's the leader of the planet now, right? Or the Planetary Alliance or whatever. He's got a situation where 2/3 of the planet is slowly dying because they don't have energy. They don't have the energy to cook their food, that kind of thing. And so they're going out and grubbing grasses, destroying rainforests and all of this just to get charcoal to cook food every day. And so he's got to accommodate them. We've also got all of the deep state things that are going on that he's got to get rid of. So he's got a ton of work, a huge amount of work. 0 point energy takes away a lot of their problems, but itself is the problem with all these weird ass mindsets who are going to turn it into a weapon if there isn't some other mechanism for introducing it. This brings up Dick Allgaier and the remote viewing. So Dick Allgaier does remote viewing, which now in his way of thinking, he's looking into the future, right? He's predicting what's going to happen in a month from now, and he's putting his mind into a particular state, and he's peering off into time. Now, I dispute that time exists, so what I think he's actually doing is staring into the emerging part of the event stream. This is all driven by karma, just like you were saying, the power behind it all. So I think of as tarot readers, as remote viewers. It's the same process, but you're much more immediate, and you don't have his particular set of filters on it, right? Mm-hmm. But Dick Allgaier has this image of 0 point energy coming out, but not as I had thought. I had assumed that we would just have a little suitcase device go to every little village that would power the whole village, everybody plug into it, no big deal, right? He's come up with something that actually the view of it. As much as I'm irritated by that view, I agree that it sort of solves these problems that we face now with 0 point technology. So what he is seeing is that our electrical grid would be tied to 0 point energy technology that would be the power source. This irritates me because 0 point technology is once you put in the money, you shouldn't have to pay for it after that, right? You just set the box down. Once you bought it, you're good. The idea is maybe we would still be paying for electricity, but it hugely reduced levels of cost, right? Or even at the same level of cost for it, if we had 100% reliable and it would never run out, that might be okay, right? And also that it wasn't polluting and so on. There would be trade-offs. You could get a socially acceptable trade-off to captured zero-point technology under the control of the government, just plugged in to feed our power lines. And I'd be sort of okay with that. Mm-hmm. And so he popped up with this idea totally on his own as coming in the near future, like, or they may even be designing it now. So there's something about remote viewing. I think remote viewing is actually far more accurate in the moment than it is. So if it's an existing thing, they get real details on it. And if it's a manifesting thing, they don't get quite as much. This is how I know that they're really dealing with the event stream. And so I think maybe Dick Allgaier is correct. Maybe that's how this will come on out. And the deal about the power line too, the power outage. So the power outage in Spain, Portugal, France, and southern France, and also into Greenland because of the way it's connected, was associated with that Schumann resonance change that you slept through, that I slept through, that caused us all kinds of problems. My dogs were up and causing me issues all night, and so we were all feeling it. So I had a tendency to think that there was some level of manipulation in that power outage coming out. And coincidentally, 6 days before that, Spain got up and said, rah, 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 we're 100% renewable, batteries and windmills and shit. So, of course, the universe has got to swat them down.
You saw it.
Yeah, you bragged on it. We're going to get you. So, but this would be, this is all self-serving, right? Because I'm trying to make plans for my own future, so I need some level of guidance in terms of a framework. And so this is reinforcing this in many ways. This is so far 100% reinforcing of the stuff that I'd seen in the data, but I never trust it when I apply it to myself. Just very interesting indeed. Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, it really set my mind at ease on a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so one more thing in that vein of thought, their attempt to create what's called the EU central bank, they're trying to establish the digital euro, and they're projecting this to be official, completely integrated and online operational by October 2025. And Bix had me look at some of your data where we were looking at some of the emotional output, and we use the cards to try to find out the nature of this, what is the bulk of these emissions, these emotional emissions, what's the problem, right? And it did look like it was around finances. It did look like it was around where energy meets resources, our ability to spend money, make money, feed ourselves, what have you. But then I dug a little bit deeper, and apparently they can't even keep that system going. They experienced major blackouts in the prototype version back in February. So here they're trying to inspire all of this trust on the part of the European people and say, oh, we're going to do this new thing. They can't even keep their stuff running. So I don't know what they expect to implement.
But this is an issue for the deep state and their controllers, okay? And I worked it from the other side. So I worked as a consultant to government, and government lies. Government lies in an interesting way, because government lies from the bottom up, because there's an incentive to lie at every stage of the operation. Every little bit of government lies continuously to the government it reports to, because it wants to look good in order to have resources directed its way. So you can't tell that your bosses in state government or county government that you're failing to meet these objectives. So you will lie on them. A lot of my task in automating stuff was to prevent those lies from percolating up too far into the system, right? But you'd see lies as and then there's a bunch that you can't catch with the software. I ran into this with resource management. So it seems really odd and sort of mundane, but the state of Washington needed to know how many fishes were of what type were being captured every year so they could manage the fisheries. There's a lot of other reasons, it's financial and so on, but you would find that the guys going out into the field that would, the fish biologists, that would assay the streams, which was the resource that that fish was in, and see how many fish could be supported and all of this, those guys would lie. And I went, as part of my job in digitizing all this, I had to go all the way to the bottom and see how it was all done in order to prepare the database structure and all of the format for getting it all in an appropriate manner, that the software itself does not distort the data being as it is being input, right? Because that can happen very easily. And so I saw how government lies on this. And so you would get fish biologists that would guesstimate, right? And there's no downside to this happening. So there was never any feedback loop that would keep them honest or keep them accurate. And so I would go out with these guys and I'd look at these little streams and they'd say 2,500. And I'd say 2,500. We were talking about how many salmon could come up these streams. And I could agree that the stream would be bigger and deeper in the different time of the year when there's outflow and stuff, but these little tiny creeks are never going to support 2,500 salmon coming back to spawn. But that 2,500 would creep into the system and you would have these biologists. And the reason that they would lie is that they're out there doing this work on this particular area. And the more work that they did, the more numbers they generated, the better their bosses looked at them, right? Mm-hmm. And that also they wouldn't put them back onto and I've seen this deliberately where I was with these guys and they took me up to a particular stream and they're just kicking back. Nobody's doing anything. They're not, I expected to hike up much further into the hills to find the determining limit of when the salmon, how far up would they make. And then you can see, because of the volume of the river, you divide by all these numbers and you get an estimate, a mathematical estimate of how much of the spawning capacity this stream could have, right? And they would just take you to one stream and we wouldn't go anywhere else. They were just guessing on all the others. Oh, it's like this one. Oh, it's like this one. So we don't have to see these other ones, right?
Silly.
So, and it was in their interest, because if they actually did go report that these other streams were much lower, they wouldn't be sent back up there next year. And they enjoyed going up into this area. A lot of times they were doing their own stuff while they were doing their work, estimating fish, this kind of thing, right? And even in groups, you have a tendency for the groups to get lazy and start lying. Then it's believed all the way up chain. At some point, that fish number gets converted into money numbers. And so it's all based on lies, based on these guys out in the field being humans that are incentivized to do regular human stuff. There was no way to work out a lot of this inbuilt incentivized lying in our system. So I never trust any numbers coming out of government, because anything that's reported by any of these guys at the top is based on all these people down below them putting out basically absolute bullshit, right? And you say, you're in there and you say, yeah, I fixed 5 of those today. And they tick mark and okay, you fill out your spreadsheet. I fixed 5 of those, right? And maybe you only fixed 1, or maybe you thought you were going to fix 5 of them, and whatever it was, right? I've seen it from the repair side as well. So the deep state has this issue. They think they can roll it out in February, and it proved no, they can't. Now, I've also done software development where I know that, on a big complex system, there's a metric. X amount of time to develop the code, and then Y amount of time to test it and find all the shit you should have worked but didn't, and then Z amount of time to redo it. And they're just making everything based on the X amount of time. They have no idea how much of it is not going to work. So I'm not particularly afraid of central bank digital currencies. I see the social credit system in China, and it fails constantly. It's actually has a lot of the failures designed into it, and it's going to break the system. The central bank system in China with the social credit actually is incentivized over time because of that basic lying within government. You have enforcement people that have to enforce, otherwise they don't get their money. So they've got to report numbers. Oh, I enforced this many people. I kicked this many people out of our social credit system for bad behavior. I'm a good social credit system monitor guy, right? And so here's their problem. Over time, that entire system is going to put more and more and more and more of the population outside of itself, because of the nature of the system and the lies built into it. Once they're on the outside of it, then it depletes the resources and there's more incentive to get more people, etc. So it's self-defeating. It's designed to fail.
Self-defeating. The system itself will implode, and it's kind of plain to see. It really is plain to see that they have such a monopoly on media, and they have so much. They can make such glossy, attractive promotions about this, this new way of doing things, and it can appeal to certain people, and yet at the very core of it, it is self-defeating. And
and also the appeal part to the people, that's all a designed in incentive from the people below. They don't want to piss off these guys upstairs. No one wants to tell your boss bad numbers ever, right? That's actually how okay, so you can see where there are incentives and systems. Catherine Austin Fitts and I agree on this. She's very big on seeing how systems are incentivized to cause their own levels of destruction and how they are incentivized to cause people problems and stuff, right? But when I was dealing with Corey Goode in the lawsuit, I analyzed the court system. So so I've had attorneys, I had an attorney, I fired him because of the cost and not doing anything. And then I took it on pro se and did it myself. This is before AI was available to me. Nonetheless, I came up with, I thought, a good strategy that was very logical. And one of the strategies was to dispute jurisdiction without surrendering myself to that jurisdiction in order to dispute it. This was something that later on lawyers were writing to me saying, damn, that's really unique. And I've set a precedent that all kinds of people can use, and they don't want this precedent to go out. Another thing I did was I gamed the system. I saw where in the system judges were incentivized to do specific kinds of actions. And so I put my documents in a particular order and in a particular arrangement with everybody else's documents in order to cause problems for the chief judge, such that he would see this coming because he knows what his calendar is. He knows he's going to have to deal with this nasty bomb I put out there. So instead of dealing with the bomb, let's just get this guy out of the case. And that's what happened. So I was the only guy that got kicked out of that case from Corey Goode because I found the incentive, and then I chose a unique approach that they agreed with. So I never thought they would agree with any of my approaches of disputing jurisdiction without surrendering myself to that jurisdiction in order to dispute it, right? But they had to, because I had put a time bomb, a stinker out there that the judge, immediately after dealing with my request for motion for dismissal, he had to deal with my request to censure the plaintiff for illegal actions. And he didn't want to do that because he knew that he could be sued either way he went. Corey was going to sue the judge or I was going to sue the judge, right? He didn't even want to get involved in that. And so he just took the easy out and kicked me out of the case, as I had hoped. So you can play these kind of
way to combo them, Cliff. I mean,
but everybody thinks it's all done on law. As soon as I tell them, okay, so here's the truth. No decision is being made in any court case that is based on law. It's all based on procedure. If you understand how the procedures work, procedure is above law. And also you can't, and our courts have been captured, by the way. So the courts don't practice common law. They don't practice land law. They don't even practice policy law. They now practice public policy law. And if you go into a court case today in any federal court, it may be different in state courts, but if you go into a federal court and you cite any Supreme Court decision pre-1939, they'll look at it, they'll put it in there, but they're not going to take it into consideration because they've been told not to. It does not matter to public policy law. Once you understand that, then you just use the procedures and throw it and get them wrapped up and you get kicked out or whatever your goal is. So, but you can game all of these systems that have been put in place by all of these people. And the systems themselves are self-gaming in the sense that, like the Chinese digital credit score is so eroding their society. Because once you get kicked out, your life is so miserable and you can never be regained. You never hear about them reaccepting, reintegrating, rehabilitating any citizens back into their social credit system. Once you're out on the other side, you are effectively been made an enemy of the state by that action, and there's no way to get back in. There's no way to recover or rehab yourself, right? So these systems are essentially self-defeating. So the CBD system in Europe, I don't think it's going to ever happen. The software failed this year, so it would, if we had everything go continuously without too much of a hiccup, so that's bumbling along this way, it'd be 3.5 years before they would actually have something that would function. These systems are quite complex. And then, of course, as soon as it functions, then they're going to be facing the issue of people like myself that would be able to game it or hack it or whatever, right? And once you have a central currency, and China fights this all the time. People are hacking the system constantly, and they never let anybody know because then that invites more of it. So it's not as dark and potentially, their systems are quite fallible, and you can manipulate them. So they don't like that idea even coming out.
Oh, no, of course not. They want to promote the idea that they're too big to fail. Their way is the only way. And I would have people know that is an op. That is not true. It's false. They are, it's marketing. It's clever marketing on their part. And yet, we have the Clif. We have Clif, and there are a lot of
I'm not a savior or anything, but you're quite right. Their problem is they believe their own hype, right?
Yes.
So they're the con man that believes his own con, basically. And so it all comes to a bad end at some point.
Very dangerous. And folks, we've got to protect Clif at all costs. And
no, don't go there, really.
Okay, I won't.
So let's be real factual about this, Jenny.
What's that?
Let's be real factual about this in this sense, okay? So in an ontological paradigm, no individual matters. All right, we're going to be reborn. We have millions of lives. This particular life, this particular body is meaningless. Anything I can contribute, I'm happy to do so, but I don't take anything personal from that because of karma. So in order for me to exist, I do an act in the moment, but I don't try and own any of the results, okay? So it's not possible to kill me if universe doesn't want me killed at that time. So there's no point trying to protect me. And so I used to be of the opinion that it was worthwhile, as the Hindus do, and as the Japanese do to some extent, to wear white, okay? Because white is a color that reflects karmic inputs, right? You're not drawing stuff to you because it reflects all light, so to speak, right? Now I'm of the opinion that personally that I'm inviting the karma that I produce because it's necessary that I experience that. And it would be stupid for me to try and push away an experience in this life that would benefit this life and other lives. And I also know that I'm not, if it wasn't me, it would be someone else, right? It's annoying that it's me, right? That I can't go off and do my own stuff.
I know what you mean. When you
get recognized, right? You have stalkers, right? All of this kind of stuff. And it's very annoying to have that level of influence, but it's necessary that it be done. And I get really irritated about people that are in the space that do it badly, which is why I've got the reputation I have, right? Because I keep plugging on it because I'm irritated at them, not because I think I'm really right about it. They just don't do it right, in my opinion.
Well, and that's, thank goodness. And that's you're right. And I know we're all very grateful. And just on a side note, ladies and gentlemen, I just had to state this. The fates have been good to me, good to us this lifetime. And I echo your sentiment about how, it's not really about the individual, the soul, the soul's journey. But this lifetime for me, this particular avatar, this experience, and living this life as Jenny, for me, it feels special. I feel like I've waited a long time to be this particular person. And I'm just so grateful because I have so many wonderful, mostly for me, it's the people that I found in this lifetime that I feel like I have been just so blessed, and it feels like a reunification as opposed to meeting folks for the first time. And folks, it's just a testament to divinity and the orchestration of creator that my best friend of nearly a decade, one of the most integral people in my life, in my corner, would find herself so deeply connected to another person that the fates saw necessary to intertwine into my timeline, into my event stream, and that's you, Clif High. And a lot of you folks know this. I was enthralled with Clif's work when I was 19 years old. There was no reason, that everybody around me was like, what?
As they should have, right?
It just, at the time, it didn't make sense. And it's so fascinating to see how orchestration does its work on all of us. And I would never have guessed, I could never have imagined that two of these people that have changed me so much and changed the course of my life would find each other in this way. And we all know who I'm talking about here. And folks, I just want to say, express my gratitude for divine orchestration in this particular lifetime. I'm blown away. I think I speak for everybody when I say we love to see the change in you. I notice a change in you, in your don't. I'm going to start. If you start, I'm going to start.
I'm going to start. Just to be the old guy.
Well, it really is, and I call them the fates. I have kind of a pagan worldview, and I see, almost a personification of of these energies working sort of like these older women that weave us together and weave events together. And that's just how I imagine it, basically. But I can't tell you, I can't express enough just how it feels to see how things played out. I never could have imagined that it would work out like this. And the effect that the two of you have had on each other, and then subsequently the rest of us, has just been nothing short of miraculous and exciting. And I'm just, my cup runneth over with the people that Creator saw fit to enmesh me with, entangle me with. And I'm telling you, Clif, I used to watch you when I was basically a kid, 19, I think 19, 20, you're still a kid, Yeah,
I think you're still a kid.
Thank you for that. But, at 36 years old now, it seems like a lifetime ago. I never could have imagined that things just intertwined. It just does so much to invigorate and excite my understanding of divine intervention and orchestration. And I truly believe that we're all right where we should be. And I'm optimistic, while the man wants to get us down and have us be in the fear state and under control. It's things like this, my best friend and, someone that I've looked up to since I was 19, to find each other in this lifetime. It blows my mind. My heart explodes. And it just invigorates me. It motivates me, and it lets me know that miracles are real. The ontology is screaming. The novelty is here. And I'm just eternally grateful. And I'm so excited. And I've kept you here quite a while, so we are going to wrap this up here. But Clif, just thank you so much for doing this today.
Well, thank you very much also for being that conduit that universe picked. You were a pivot, and I pivoted around you as appropriate. And it's like gratitude for all gifts. And yeah, I've got to go, or I'm gonna.
I know, guys. This is it. We hit that line here. I knew it was going to happen. I wanted to save it till the end, but really and truly, it feels like we are, as a collective at this major crossroads. We're going to have to choose now intentionally and deliberately the kind of world that we want to live in. That means you vote with your resources, you vote with your health, you vote with your money, and you do everything deliberately and with intention, and we never give up. And so that's my closing statement. And I do hope to do this again, because there are so many other things that I want to get your thoughts on. But ladies and gentlemen, Clif High, the one and only, an absolute asset to.
Thank you for that. I don't have any ego about all of this, and I do have gratitude for all gifts. And I have a great deal of gratitude for the Ontology providing me that ultimate gift at this point, right? That connection through you to your best friend. So, and we will do this in the future, but I've got to go off and cry for a bunch.
All right, I don't blame you. Okay, so folks, we're going to have all kinds of links in the description. If you guys want to get readings with me, I'll have my website down below. Also, if you like what you saw here today and you say, I think I want to support her and her works, go ahead and subscribe to my Patreon. I do all kinds of cool things over there, readings and really anything that the folks, it's very subscriber, motivated content. So whatever the people want, that's what I deliver. And thank you so much, Clif, for sharing me with your people and giving me this platform and this time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time.